Hello everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in today. All right, it's been 6 months and about 7,500 miles with this truck right here. This is my 2025 Toyota Tacoma TRD Off-Road Premium with the iForceMax hybrid drivetrain. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to tell you about some of the modifications and upgrades I've done to the truck. And I will also go over the things I like about the truck and the things that I don't like about the truck. All right, you're going to want to know, have I had any issues with the truck? I've seen a lot of stuff on the internet about, some of these ones, maybe they were 2024 models having transmission failure, some other things going wrong. Fortunately, I haven't had a single issue with this one. Now, it's only been 6 months and this is a 2025, so they did have 1 year to work out the bugs, and I only have just under 8,000 miles on it, but I haven't had a single hiccup or issue or anything that would require a trip to the dealer. I did do an oil change, the first oil change at the dealer. Toyota gives you free maintenance for the first couple years. And I'm going on the heavy duty maintenance schedule because I off-road the truck and I tow with the truck, so I have severe use case. But I haven't had any issues with it, so that's been good. Now, will this 4th gen Tacoma be as reliable as the older Tacomas, especially the 3rd generation? I don't think so. Just being honest, I mean, let's be real about it. They've added so much complication in the hybrid system, the going to forced induction versus the naturally aspirated V6 that they used to have. All the stuff they've put on here, and this is the problem with all modern vehicles and trucks, not just the Toyota, but they've gone away from the long-term reliability and durability towards adding power and features and all this cool stuff for marketing. And the vehicle does perform really well when it's all working, but I think in the long term, if you want to keep your vehicle a very long time, I don't know that I would really trust this. It just makes it, it's natural. You got to understand, right? When you add more complexity, you're reducing the overall reliability in the long run, most likely. It doesn't mean it'll be super unreliable, but is it as reliable as just a basic 3rd generation Tacoma? I mean, I don't think so. Now, I personally don't really care about this problem, and I know that sounds kind of ridiculous and out of touch, but I mean, I review things for a living, not just on this YouTube channel, but I have another YouTube channel where I review motorcycles. That's my main job. So I turn through vehicles and I review stuff and I try different stuff. I don't keep things long-term at all, so it's always going to be under warranty for me. It is a downside if it breaks, because then I'd have to get a loaner vehicle or rent a vehicle or something, so that does suck. But I'm not really concerned about the long-term reliability. But of course, most normal people are going to be concerned about that, so that's why I bring that up. So I've had a lot of full-size trucks before, and I've also had mid-size trucks before. The pros and cons of mid-size versus full-size, the reason why I went back to the mid-size truck for this point in my life is I wanted that vehicle that does a bit of everything. I wanted to be something small enough and nimble enough to navigate some off-road Jeep kind of trails without scraping off the sides of the vehicle because it's too big or having too long of a wheelbase. So you can see I've got the short bed for the short wheelbase. So I wanted something that was off-road capable without having to own a Jeep as a second or a third vehicle. I wanted something that's easier to park in the Costco parking lot or whatever around town. Just it's narrower, it's shorter, it has a shorter wheelbase than some of the larger trucks. It's just easier to maneuver and park and live with on a daily basis. So those are the real benefits to it. In terms of price, it's really not cheaper than a full-size truck that much these days. These have gotten super expensive. I mean, this was a $58,000 truck MSRP. And then they aren't really more fuel efficient either. I mean, this does not get good fuel economy, even with the hybrid. With the stock wheels and tires, I probably got maybe 21, 20, maybe. Now I get more like 18 to 19. That's not towing and not with a load on it. So the fuel economy is really the same with the full-size truck. So unless you want the benefit of the easier parking and the smaller footprint for off-roading and overlanding and that kind of stuff, then I think you have to think really hard about getting this, because you do sacrifice a lot of cargo space in the bed and a lot of interior space when you go down to the mid-size truck. So it's all about the pros and cons and what compromises you want to have. I want to talk a little bit about why did I get a 4th gen Tacoma after never considering the previous generation. So I never seriously considered buying a 3rd generation Tacoma. The things that they did with the 4th generation, I mean, I've talked about the potential downsides of all the complexity they've added, but there are a lot of upsides to this generation of Tacoma. We got to be real. I mean, I'm looking at my notes here. So the list of improvements that really swayed me to actually get a Tacoma this time for the 4th gen. way more power and torque than the previous generation, especially if you get the iForceMax engine, which I did. You also get the 8-speed transmission, which is way better. You got so many more ratios for going up mountains, for towing and hauling stuff. It just, the powertrain is so much better on this new Tacoma. Now, it may not be as reliable in the long run, but it does perform really, really well when everything's working. The seating position, the ergonomics and seating position. The old Tacomas and some of the 4Runners have been guilty of this. I feel like you sat on the floor, like the floor was too high, the seat was too low to the floor. They fixed that. This has more of a normal driving position you would expect out of any other truck or something like that. So that's a huge difference. The interior technology in here, the big screen, all the safety features and technology, the camera systems. I've got this truck has, it's fully loaded. You know, I've got a sunroof. I've got what I really like is the ventilated seats that this package has. A lot more features and interior technology than the third generation had. A huge advantage to the fourth generation, I talked about this in the last episode, is running larger tires. On the third generation, I mean, it was hard to get like a 32 or a 33 in there. Forget about 35s unless you did major modifications. With this truck, you can put 35s on without any major mods to the truck, and that's phenomenal. I'll talk in a minute here about why I'm actually running 34-inch tires and not 35-inch tires. The rear brakes are now disc brake instead of a drum brake. You've got a fully boxed frame, so there's some small things like that kind of seem like a big deal with the fourth generation. Another thing that some people don't mention is that the third generation, if you look underneath it, it's got the transfer case kind of hanging down. So when you go on rough, rocky off-road stuff, you kind of worry about scraping that. You got to protect that. They made this much flatter underneath, and they tucked that transfer case in a lot better. There's other small things that they've improved, you know, the off-road traction control system, whatever Toyota calls it, MTS, crawl mode, DAC, whatever. They have so many freaking acronyms in this truck, I can't keep track of it, all the different things. But the off-road traction control system, yes, the truck does not have a front locker. It does have a rear locker, doesn't have a front, which is kind of disappointing at this price because some of the competitors do. But the off-road traction control system works really well and is much quieter and just works better than the older Toyotas did. Let's talk a little bit about the modifications that I've done. So I showed in a previous episode how I'd put on 35-inch Falcon AT4 tires on the same rims. Now, I found that the 35-inch was just maybe a little bit big for the truck for my taste. It reduced the fuel economy quite a bit. They were a very heavy tire, the Falcons in that size. They also rubbed a tiny bit at certain situations inside the front fender. The speedometer was also off quite a bit. So I just thought, maybe I went one size too big. So what I did was I went down to these 34-inch BFG KO3s. There's no real preference I have for BFG over Falcon. They're both great. It just for this size, BFG has this size. It's also much lighter tire than the Falcon, which does help with the fuel economy and the acceleration and braking. Because remember, when you put a larger, heavier tire on your truck, you are really compromising the truck's performance, especially on the highway. So you got to be aware of that. So I've been real happy with. I think this is the perfect size, honestly, for the fourth gen Tacoma. I would say get a 34-inch tire. I'll put the details of these exact tires, the exact sizing, and the exact specs of the rims that I have down below so you can check that out. Now, the other upgrades I did, really the only other upgrades I've done was just to protect the truck for off-roading. I do want to be able to take it on some real off-road trails without damaging it. So I did have to get, first of all, I was disappointed that Toyota for $58,000 on a TRD off-road, they didn't give you any skid plates underneath and they didn't give you any rock slide protection. To me, that's a huge miss. Some of the competitors have it. I don't see why they don't have that. Now, yes, they do have the Trailhunter and the TRD Pro. Dealers gouge for those, way too much money, and I didn't want to get one of those. So what I did was I went to Toyota. I bought a genuine OEM Toyota rock sliders. I think these are from the Trailhunter, but anyway, they just bolt right on, super easy. And then I put on the Toyota Trailhunter skid plates. The Trailhunter skid plates are really legit. They are heavy-duty steel. They fit really well on the truck. I've also got the differential skid plate as well underneath the rear diff to protect that. So this truck is protected. The skid plates, I think altogether were somewhere around $900, including the differential. There's like three pieces. There's the front, there's the middle skid plate, and then there's the diff skid plate. That was somewhere around $800 or $900, I think. And then the rock sliders, I believe, were around $800 or $900 as well for the set of those. So altogether, I've spent probably $1,800 on the protection, and then on the wheels and tires, it's about a what was that? I'm trying to $33,000, $3,500 maybe to get all the wheels and the rims to do that. So what is that? You know, around $5,000 to $6,000 in my opinion to get this thing trail ready or off-road ready. All right, so what do I like about this Tacoma after 6 months of ownership? The powertrain overall is very strong. You have good horsepower, although I will say it's not fast. Like it's actually doesn't feel fast at all. Here's what I mean. If you just floor it from a stop, 0 to 60 doesn't seem that impressive. It's not very good. But the pulling power, like the roll-on acceleration, if you're going 40 and you need to accelerate to 70, it's very strong compared to the previous versions of this truck. So I think that's really the torque. The horsepower is not all that impressive. For pulling trailers, which I do all the time, this is very, very good. Really has the power and torque of many full-size larger trucks. So that's really, really good. The 8-speed transmission is pretty great. Maybe not the best out there, but I think it's good. Having the 8 ratios is really good. So overall, I'm really happy with the powertrain performance of this iForceMax. Now, it doesn't get good fuel economy, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Next thing for me is the styling. I know that's like vain or whatever, but I want to turn around. This is like the test I give all my vehicles, bikes, cars, whatever I have. Does it pass the turn around and look at it test when you walk away from it? This one does. Like, I like this style of this truck. It just looks mean. It looks like a real truck. I really like the silver color as well. It just looks muscular, this overall design. So I'm really happy with that. I like that. Next up for me, I kind of talked about this before, but all of the gadgets and gizmos that this has, I like that kind of stuff. You may not, and that's just a personal thing. It's not right or wrong, but I like the ventilated seats. I like this huge tablet here on this giant iPad on the dash. I like it. It's super easy to see all my applications and maps and whatever. I love it. All of the cool things that it has inside, I'm a huge fan of it. The next thing for me, this vehicle is a good off-road performer, very, very solid. And that's one of the reasons I got this versus having an F-150 or a Ram 1500 or one of those, or a Tundra, is that those trucks are really too big to take on a lot of trails that I go on. Whereas it's not like a Jeep Wrangler. Doesn't have that sort of mountain goat personality where you can really go anywhere, but it's pretty small and tidy and you can take it most places. The overall ability off-road is impressive for a truck. And I'm very, very happy with that part of it. I will also say that one of the reasons I have the Tacoma is that you get that off-road ability, but you also get good highway driving manners. Go drive a Jeep Wrangler or a Jeep Gladiator, both of which I've owned, multiple of those, on the freeway for all 8 hours, and tell me about the steering, the response to the wind gusts. Their overall highway performance sucks on a Jeep. They're just terrible on the highway. Terrible highway vehicles. Whereas the Tacoma is more like a car or regular truck in that regard because you have independent front suspension and all that. You don't have the solid front axle. A Jeep solid front axle is awesome off-road, but it sucks on the highway. And anybody who's being honest will tell you the same thing. So that's what I like about the Tacoma. I mean, the thing is with this truck is that this is my only vehicle. My wife has a car and then I've got this. I do everything with this. I tow trailers, I haul motorcycles in the bed, I do my Home Depot runs, I go to the doctor's office, I commute to different places, I park it at the airport, I take my family in it, I take my family off-roading with it. It's an everything vehicle for me as opposed to owning, a heavy duty truck and a Jeep and a sports car and all that. Would that be kind of cool? Yes, but I'm a person of less is more. And I'd rather have one brand new Tacoma than a bunch of older vehicles sitting around that I've got to deal with. So for me, that's why I have the Tacoma. Now, what are the things I don't like about the Tacoma? There's a number of them. This is by far from a perfect vehicle. It's overpriced. So compared to a Ford Ranger Raptor, or if you look at a Colorado or Canyon ZR2, or the AT4X, I guess is the Canyon, this doesn't have the features and capability for the price point that some of those other trucks do. So I think in terms of pricing and value, it does fall behind there. You'd hope that you're going to get it back on the resale value being a Tacoma, but we don't know that yet for the 4th generation. Okay, the next big downside, this is my biggest complaint about this truck, and it's a pretty big one. They undersized the fuel tank. The fuel tank is way too small on this vehicle. When you are driving normally, you are lucky to get a 300-mile fuel range. You're lucky to get that empty. When you are towing, you're lucky to get a 200-mile fuel range. The fuel tank is something like 18 gallons or somewhere in there. That's ridiculous. A truck should have at least like a 25-gallon fuel tank, right? I know some other mid-sized trucks, maybe they only have like 22 or whatever, but that's still better than this. I've had full-size trucks that had 36-gallon fuel tanks before, and you could drive what was it, the Sierra, GMC Sierra I had, it was a 600 to 700 mile fuel range with that one. My Ram had an 800-mile fuel range. F-150 I had with the 700-mile fuel range. So this being, especially when towing, to have to stop before I get to 200 miles is ridiculous. They really screwed that up. They made the fuel tank, I believe, smaller in the hybrid, but the problem is the hybrid doesn't really get better miles per gallon. It just adds power. So they really messed that up, and that's something I don't like. Next up for me as a downside is the ride quality is bad. On the highway, on the pavement, you feel every tiny crack in the pavement, every little tiny bump, it just jars through the cabin. It's not a very good ride at all. I really was shocked how bad it was on this truck. Now, when you put on bigger tires and you start playing with the load ratings of the tires and that, yes, you are going to make it slightly worse. But even with the factory tires and wheels, it still sucked. These 34-inch, and they are load range E's, which I like for off-roading, they did make it probably 20% worse than it was stock, but even stock, it's really bad. Now, and also on the ride quality, even though it seems like it's set up overly firm, the problem is when you have a load in the bed or you're towing a trailer and you have some tongue weight on it, the rear suspension will bottom out through a dip really bad. So it seems like it doesn't have good suspension valving or damping or spring rates in the back, and that's kind of an issue there. The next downside for me is the drivetrain has a clunk in it when you shifts from electric mode to gas mode. So as a hybrid, and this may be one reason not to consider the hybrid, test drive both and see what you like. You do get all the extra power and torque with this, but I'm not sure it's worth it because it doesn't really get better MPG. And the clunkiness is when it shifts at low speed from the EV mode to gas mode, it kind of jars through the truck and it's kind of jarring and it's just not refined. I've driven a lot of other vehicles. My wife has a Honda hybrid. It's smooth as butter. You would never know when it changes. This is very clunky, and I think that could be greatly improved. Another downside for me is there's the safety systems on Toyota. They have too many safety nannies, and if you turn anything off in terms of all the different safety systems it has, it's constantly nagging you and pestering you on the dash with reminders coming up and beepers going off, and it just drives me insane. Now, if you leave every single thing on, I guess it's not a problem, but the minute you start turning anything off, like I have the rear automatic braking turned off because it'll slam to a brake when it thinks you're getting too close. It'll slam on the brakes when it thinks you're getting too close to something in the back. I hate that feature. I turn that off, and every time I start the truck, warning, warning, that's turned off. It's like, I know, I turned it off. Anything like that can be really annoying with the Toyota. They make that too frustrating. The last thing I would say is that the rear seat room, while it does work for me because I have a 5-year-old kid and my wife is also really small, but she rides up front, it's not an issue for us as a family. For many families, I think it would be if you have bigger people in your family. But the rear seat's overly tight for what this vehicle is not that small. If you look at the exterior dimensions, the rear seat's too small. They should give you about 2 inches more legroom. 2 inches more would be the sweet spot, make all the difference in the world, if you know what I'm talking about. And that really, though, I mean, honestly, compared to like a Gladiator or some of the other ones out there, this does suffer in the rear legroom. I feel they could improve that. Just give me 2 more inches of legroom. I think that would be enough. I don't need the gigantic F-150 rear seat or whatever. That's overkill, like unless you're 8 feet tall. But this, I just need like 2 more inches of legroom, I think, in the back. All right, so some final thoughts on my 6-month Tacoma review. I think I've covered everything pretty well. If you have questions about certain things, put that down below. I'll tell you this, like, I know people like to get fanboy about whatever car or truck that they have at the time. I'll tell you the truth how I feel. Everything, I've had so many different vehicles, cars, trucks, motorcycles, probably close to 80 or 90 different vehicles, RVs and trailers in my life, all these different things. I like to test things. I love to try them out. Everything has its pros and cons. You can compare any two things and say, well, this is good in this area, but it's bad in these areas. This other vehicle is good in this areas, but it's bad in these areas. You try to find the compromises that you can accept for how you want to use the vehicle. All these brand preferences, all of these people saying that one's so much better than the other, to me, it's all kind of ridiculous. Like they all have their unique pros and their unique cons. And it's just trying to find out kind of what works best for you. And I do think we have an issue in the modern automotive world, because vehicles have gotten way too expensive compared to people's income, and vehicles have gotten way too complicated. And I think that's going to compromise the long-term reliability in a huge way. So we have a giant crisis brewing here in the automotive world. I don't know what we're going to do about it. But getting back to the Tacoma, I do like this vehicle. It fits my needs. It does everything I need to do. It's not perfect, and there are those big annoyances that I talked about. But as a vehicle that can do everything from hitting the trails to towing a trailer to driving to work to commuting different places, you know, all of that, the Tacoma's, I think, pretty hard to beat. And yeah, with all the power that you get with this iForceMax, you don't have to have a slow vehicle anymore like the old Tacomas were. And it looks awesome. Is it overpriced? Yeah, it is. We talked about that. So anyway, let me know, what would you like me to cover on the next Tacoma video? I'll probably keep it for 6 more months at least. So at least keep it for a year so I can do a 1-year review with this truck. Let me know what you'd like me to cover in terms of that, or if you have any questions or comments, and what you think of the 4th generation Tacoma. I guess I want to know, would you buy a 4th gen Tacoma versus everything else that's out there? What are your thoughts about it? All right, well, I hope this has been useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you out on the trails.